Today we're gonna be doing sous vide hamburgers. You might be asking, why sous vide hamburgers? Just put them on the grill, they're fantastic, or a cast iron pan on the stove. Yeah, I get that. We are not gonna be doing smash burgers or anything like that. Yes, absolutely, there are better methods for doing things like smash burgers, but if you're talking about a pub burger, a nice, juicy, thick pub burger, there's no better way to do it than sous vide. So we're gonna do that today. 3 machines. What's going on here? What I'm gonna try doing today is to experiment with different temperatures with you. As I look at sous vide burgers, there's a lot of literature out there, and a lot of them will recommend anywhere between, you know, call it high 120s to 150, 160. There's a lot out there. For me, I think the sweet spot is somewhere between, let's call it 130 and 140. So I've got a machine at 130, I've got a machine at 135, and a machine at 140. Not in that order, reverse order, but you get the drift. There's 3 machines with those 3 temperatures, and we're gonna cook some sous vide burgers today, some nice thick sous vide burgers today. We're gonna cut into them and show you what the doneness looks like. And when we're talking about those temperatures, it's important to remember we're gonna sear these at the end. I think I'm gonna do a cast iron today. You can do them on the grill however you like. I think cast iron will preserve the juiciness the most. That's why we're going that route. But that sear is gonna raise the temperature, let's call it 10 degrees. You know what? We'll measure it. So with that, let's dive into it. I went to the butcher today and picked up some ground beef. This is actually 85-15. 80-20 will produce a juicier burger. If they had 80-20, I probably went that route. I would have gone that route. But the biggest thing you want to do is make sure you're using fresh ground beef. So I've got about 18 ounces here to form 3 patties. So I'm going to go 6 ounces each for these patties. They're going to be nice and thick, but the big thing you want to do is make sure you don't want to make them super dense. So make sure you're not really compacting them in. Just kind of flip them around between hands if you can to form. I'm kind of measuring this out to make sure I have 3 that are more or less equal in weight. Without using my scale, I probably could pull that out, but here's our 3. And you know what? I'm gonna take a little off this guy, give it to him, and a little off this guy and give it to him, and we are more or less equal now. A little more. All right, so just gonna flip it, toss it between my hands, and then we'll get down to a nice burger shape. And these are gonna end up being roughly 1 inch thick or so, which I think is perfect for sous vide burgers. You can go thicker than that, certainly. All right, so we've got our 3 patties that are roughly 6 ounces each. One way to measure this too is if you've got your bun and you want to make sure your meat is how you like it relative to your bun, use that as a proxy to how big your burger should be. If I had more meat, I might have made these a little bigger, but it's a little tip for you in the future that I didn't follow today, but you can utilize for yourself. So we got our 3 patties, again, roughly 6 ounces each. I've got these little handy dandy like Ziploc holders. So I really like to use these because I don't like the process of folding over my Ziploc bags to make sure I don't contaminate them. So I'm just gonna drop them in one at a time. And we today are gonna be using the water displacement method. Again, because you don't want your burgers to get too dense. So I much prefer to use the water displacement method when I'm doing sous vide hamburgers, because ultimately you can use a vacuum sealer. You gotta make sure you use like gentle mode. You don't wanna compress the meat. That's the biggest thing here. So we're gonna be water displacement method, using the water displacement method today. So let me put these aside. I'm gonna wash my hands quickly. So I'm gonna move this big boy here. So our setup today is we've got an Anova Nano going, we've got an INKBIRD ISV 200W, and then we have the Wevac. So those are 3. Actually covered these 3 in my budget sous vide video. I'll post a link to that in case you're curious at all. But let's get to the water displacement method. All you're doing with the water displacement method, if you don't know already, You're gonna close the Ziploc bag till you have about an inch or two left open. You're gonna submerge the bag, and that's gonna push out all the water. And you go all the way till you have that tippy top corner that's open. And as you get that underwater, you close it, and then voila. You have a nice air-free bag that is not compressing your meat, most importantly for us today. So, there's one. Let's do the other two. Number two. Now, importantly, when you're doing the water displacement method, this is the 130 bath, so it's cool enough. You can do it when the water's not heated up quite yet, particularly if you have sensitive hands. As temperatures get higher in your sous vide use, you're not really going to be able to do it with that warm or hot water, I should say. So just be aware of that so you don't scald yourself. Okay, so let's get these bags in the water. I'm going to grab some clips just to clip them on the side. All right, so I could only find 2 clips, but no fear, I've got sous vide magnets. So we're gonna use those as our third one. But let's put these in. We're gonna cook, so in terms of time, like we said, from a temperature perspective, we're trying 140, 135, 130. From a time perspective today, I'm gonna do them for an hour because it's getting to be lunchtime and I don't wanna wait longer than that. But your window should be an hour to, let's call it 4 hours. Anywhere in there is gonna be fine. If you're trying to pasteurize, you're gonna be 2 hours plus, and that's gonna, pasteurization, remember, is by temperature, and then you wanna make sure that clock starts when the center is cooked through to that temperature. So 2+ hours for something like 130 is probably closer to like 2.5 hours, 2 hours 45 minutes. As you get up in temperature, that drops. But 2+ hours for pasteurization is the rough guideline. All right, so let's get these in. So we'll start with the 140. I'll use the sous vide magnets on that because the water's pretty low and the clip might not reach that far. So these are really nice because you can just push it down into the water that way, and there you go. Holds them in place, fantastic. All right, so then we'll go with the 135 here. We just did 140, this is the 135. Make sure it's submerged. You can see I'm using sous vide balls too. Big advocate of those. Helps with efficiency. I'm not being very efficient with these 3 tubs, but it helps to have sous vide balls. All right, so now we got the 130. Clip that on. Anova's got a nice, beautiful rack to make it really easy in their container that comes with it. But everything looks great. So we're gonna let these sit for an hour. We'll come back. I'll start doing the fixins now. All right, so I know I said an hour. We actually went 2 hours, so we got some hungry people around here, but life got in the way. But that's the beauty of sous vide, right? You have a lot of flexibility with the amount of time that you cook the food. So go live your life and get to it. So we were at 2 hours. Let's get these burgers out. The first thing we're gonna do after we take these out is I've got a bed of paper towels here, and we're gonna let them rest for about 10 minutes on that bed of paper towels. It's good to let them rest simply because we're trying to keep the temperature inside that hamburger at that uniform doneness, if you will. So we don't wanna overcook by putting it immediately onto the grill or the cast iron like I've pulled out, but that's what we're gonna do first. So again, this is the 130 burger. You can see it's cooked all the way through. There's not a ton of juice, which is good because that means it was preserved within the burger itself. So I'll put the 130 burger all the way to my left. Lay it down there. Then we've got the 135 burger. See, beautiful, nice patty there. And then finally, the 140 burger. So there are 3 burgers. I'm gonna let them rest for 10 minutes. In the meantime, I'll start getting the cast iron ready and hot. and ready to go, but we're gonna rest for 10 minutes, come back, then we'll sear them. A few things while these are resting. One being, if you pasteurize the burger, so you cooked it long enough at high enough a temp for this thickness of meat that you're using here, I would have kept it in the bag and put it in the fridge. It would have been good for at least 2 weeks, and you can just heat it up after that, preferably with the sous vide, so you're not getting it overcooked. You could throw them in the freezer as well. If you do throw them in the freezer, I would recommend like just throwing them into the sous vide to reheat it straight from frozen. It's a great method. And then secondly, I should season these now. You may have noticed I didn't season them at the beginning. You certainly can. Don't season before you form the patties. Only season the outside, because you don't want that moisture to get drawn out from within the meat. Changes the texture a little bit. So you can season beforehand. I didn't do that. You don't necessarily have to do that. I like to season now, generously with some salt and pepper. You can use whatever seasoning you like for your burgers. So I would always recommend seasoning after as well. And the reason being is because it helps form a really nice crust. When we're gonna just, as you'll see, we'll be briefly on the cast iron, or you could do it on your grill, about a minute aside. But seasoning at the end, make sure you taste that seasoning, and helps form a crust, which is wonderful. Now, it's been about 10 minutes, so I'm going to flip them over now. And you want to make sure your patties are dry, so that's the reason I'm flipping them over. And now I'm going to season the top. The bottoms are clearly quite dry, so no issues there. So I'm going to season them now, again with salt and pepper. And then I've got a cast iron going. We'll drop them in there. So I told you guys before, I wanted to take the temperature of the burger patties before we seared it, and then again after we seared it, just to see what the temperature effect of that searing would be, whether we could say it would be 5, 10, 0 degrees more, given the rest. But let's see what happens there. So again, we had, this was 130, 135, 140. So the 130 burger reads, it's about 108 right now. 135 reads 114. And the 140 burger reads 118. So 118, 114 or so, and 109, I think is what I said. I've got it on tape, so we'll know exactly. But that gives us our baseline for what the temperature is. We'll sear it, and we'll see what it goes up to after you sear, to see if that should have an effect on where you cook your meat, where you cook your burgers to begin with. Okay, I like to use some butter. The butter draws out some wonderful flavors, just adds a great bit of char. So let's add a little butter to our cast iron pan. The cast iron pan is medium-high heat, is what I got it to. But we just want a quick hard sear. We're gonna do about a minute aside. I'm grabbing about 3/4 of a tablespoon of butter there. We'll let that melt. Drop these in. I'm gonna add the cheese. And I think we're about done here, so let's plate them. All right, so like I said, we would take the temperature after we got that nice char on the burgers. If it's helpful to see, you can see that beautiful char. You probably caught it in the pan as well, but there you go. And let's just see what we are from an internal temperature perspective. We got 135, 125, and 131. So the sear didn't raise the temperature of the inside of the meat, which is really important. So when you're cooking to the temperature that you want for your internal meat, your internal burger to be, just cook it to that temperature because you're not going to raise it through the sear, particularly since we let it sit for about 10 minutes before we started heating it up. So a good piece of information there. So with that, let's fix some burgers. I'm going to invite my wife to have some burgers with us. What do you think? She's hungry. I know she is. So, Jen, you want to have some burgers? I know you've been waiting. All right, we got the burgers. Finally.
Finally.
So tell the people how you like your burger.
I like ketchup, mustard, and pickles on my burger.
Just keeping it simple.
Yeah.
All
I'm
right.
a classic girl.
All right. I'm going to put some ketchup. No. I'm going to do mayo, lettuce, and tomato.
What if I want some mayo?
You can do that. You can put some mayo on.
How about it? Yeah. No, I'll keep it. I'll keep it out with the mustard.
Well, we have 3, so we might just
I
put...
kind of want some mayo instead of mustard.
So maybe put mayo on one of them. So we got some toasted buns. Here. You want to make your burger?
I would love to.
So this is, I'm going to put this one in the middle. In order of doneness, so we can keep that straight. Okay, so do you want the more cooked? So we have 3 different temperatures. Do you want it like more cooked or less cooked? They're not going to be overcooked or
Probably
undercooked.
more cooked.
All right, so you do this one.
Okay.
I'll do the least cooked one. Here, ketchup, mustard. Spoons. And pickles. I knew what you like.
I think I put too much ketchup in. Although I'm not sure that's possible with me.
You like it saucy.
I like it saucy.
You like it saucy. All right. I'm going to cut into it first so we can see the differences in how they look from a doneness perspective. This being the 130 burger. And there you go. Not super red. No redness at all. It's just the slightest speck. It's pink inside. It's a little pink inside. And then I'm gonna do this one on topping without any toppings. We can add them afterwards. This is the 135 burger. And there's not too much of a difference there. And then we get to the 140 burger. And that's a little more done on the inside. So all of these are, let's just stick 1, 2, 3. So there are your 3 burgers. And you can see a bit of gradation between them, but not a whole lot. You're gonna end up in the medium, sort of the medium range, the medium rare to medium range with this range of temperatures. So 130 to 140, anywhere in there is a pretty good option, at least for me. I would say you. How's that 140 look for you?
Looks pretty good.
Uniform?
Yep.
All right, why don't you eat it? What are you waiting for?
For you to stop
All
talking.
right, I'm gonna try this one.
Very good.
All right, good. But again, that's the beauty of sous vide is you won't have this temperature gradient, excuse me, like you would if you tried to grill a fat burger like this. It's uniform all the way through, which keeps it super juicy
It is
and
very
just
juicy.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Cheers.